Tom Valazak is here. He is a self-described road enthusiast, road geek, and road scholar. Since 2010, his website crosscountryroads.com and his YouTube channel Cross Country Roads have steadily grown to include thousands of driving videos and tens of thousands of photographs that document the American interstate highway system from coast to coast and border to border. As part of his goal to document every mile of the interstate system, he is currently in the midst of another massive road trip aimed at documenting the interstates of the greater New York region, and I'm very pleased that he has taken some time out of what must be a very busy schedule to spend a few minutes with me in my office here in Tarrytown, New York. Tom, welcome.
Thanks for the intro, Dan. I'm glad to be here.
Great to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Great to finally get to meet and chat with you.
Let's get right into it. This trip that you're in the midst of, you're covering 3 states. I mean, technically 4, but you're going to spend more than 60 seconds in 3 states. So that's New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. You're also getting a cameo appearance in Connecticut.
Correct.
Talk about the trip so far. I mean, your thoughts on it. You know, this is really your first time getting in depth with the roads of New York City and the surrounding areas. So, what are your first impressions of the roads of New York?
My first impressions was it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. It was, any big city, especially the big city, the biggest city in the country, you expect to have traffic and congestion, and the roads not to be a little tight in spots and stuff like that. But that keeps it interesting. It mixes things up a lot, and so my impression was that it wasn't. I went in expecting it to be, not fun at all, but in fact it was fun for most of it. A lot of interesting urban freeways in the New York City area, and I was glad I got the chance to document those. And I have no regrets whatsoever. I'm glad I did it when I did, and it's been fun so far.
What is it that has been so fun about this trip so far? Because usually what I'm used to seeing from you is like the rural countryside and all those other things. I mean, I know that you ventured into urban settings before, but on a scale like this, in a city like this, you haven't done something of this scale before. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yep.
So, I mean, how does that compare, doing this, compared to doing, say, the roads out in the Great Plains or the Rockies or places like that?
Good question. That it takes a lot more planning, and you can't get greedy with how much you want to get done in a certain day. You just have to take it for what it is. Have a plan B in mind, and in case you do get hung up somewhere, if there's whatever happens, traffic or the usual city holdups. It just what made it fun was, I think, exactly what you hinted at, is that it's a nice change of pace from where I spend a lot of time doing the rural interstates, which are easier. You can just relax and just hammer down on those, I'm always welcome to a nice change of pace, which doing the urban freeways in New York City certainly provided that nice change of pace. Just something different, and also interesting, to see the different parts that you've saw so many photos of and saw other videos of, like those made by yourself, and see it for yourself, and really just take in what it's like to drive around the biggest city in the country, all over it, and it was a fun experience and a nice change of pace, like I said.
Take me through a typical day for you on a trip like this. And I'm sure that the routine is pretty similar, regardless of where you are. But like today, for example, take me through like your preparation, how you executed your itinerary, things that you look for during your trip, things like that.
Okay. I pretty much it consists of getting up, first light, so I have the maximum amount of daylight to film and shoot in, which is essential when you're trying to document every mile of interstate in the country, that you have the light and the weather, which is nice too, to do it.
Yeah,
you can't
weather can be a challenge, especially in the summer months.
Yes, it can. I certainly have seen that, and but you deal with it. You take the good with the bad, and but you I try to get up to maximize the light that I have to do it in, and I'm more someone that likes to have a little routine so I don't forget or leave stuff out. So that usually consists of getting up, chugging down some coffee so I'm ready to go, and getting all my equipment, testing out, briefly, making sure it's all in working order, and I like to try to plan certain stops along the way, because I know like what range I can usually drive before I need a break or need to go to the bathroom or whatnot, or if there's something I want to stop and do or see along the way. I think ahead to those certain stops, and from there, throughout the course of the filming and photographing along the way, when I'm done for the day, I like to just try to relax and go through my work from that day and see what I did well and what I didn't do so well, so that I can improve the following day on those errors or whatever. And that's how I think you get better at this, is just by doing it and trial and error and making some mistakes, but learning from them. And but yeah, I try to relax and just get a decent meal, treat yourself a little bit. If there's a nice steakhouse or something around, I splurge for the big steak.
Yeah, man, there's nothing. Hey, you gotta reward yourself sometimes.
Yeah. Some days out here, it's you really feel like rewarding yourself.
Well, especially on the long days.
Yeah.
If you're covering hundreds of miles at a time. If you're on the road for, say, like 10, 11, 12 hours even, I mean, it's got to be. Again, in the middle of the day, you're thinking, oh my God, when's this day going to be over with?
Yeah.
I would imagine you would feel that way more if you were in the middle of Wyoming as opposed to in the middle of New Jersey. But
right.
I'm sure that there's an element of that in there.
Right, and that's really all there is to it. I guess I'm pretty simple in that regard.
Yeah.
It's just the big part when I'm sitting there at the end of the day is just really thinking about through that past day what I did well and what didn't go well. Say there was a stretch where I was driving into the sun like 2 days ago, and some of the photos didn't come out like I wanted. Well, that's hard to tell at the time, so I use that time at the end of the day after splurging and eating a big, nice meal and treating myself.
You like talking about this big meal?
I do. I'm hungry. We should go. We should go get a meal.
Let's go. Let's go right now. Absolutely.
We'll be back in a little bit for that. No, just kidding. So that's your time to reflect,
right,
and to fix any issues so they don't continue throughout the whole run or future runs. And also, I do a little social media. I'm not overly active on there, but I try to do that just to keep in touch with other road enthusiasts like you and others who I keep in touch with often on there, and because I know they'll appreciate the content that you have to share, and so it's just little things like that keep you occupied till it's lights out, and then up and at 'em again the next morning.
Mm-hmm. And then you start the process all over
again.
However many days it is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. So, and you are originally you're from Western Pennsylvania.
Correct. A town called Indiana, but it's in Pennsylvania.
That's confusing.
Yeah.
So if you say you're from Indiana, people think you're from Fort Wayne or
their eyes light up like I'm from Pennsylvania. Oh,
I don't know where the hell that is. All right. A lot over 30 years ago, that's where it started. That's where your life got started.
Right.
Talk about your earliest road memories and kind of how roads played a part in your childhood and your adolescence.
My first experience with being on any roads at all was once a year near the end of the summer, like this time, end of August or so. We would go on a family vacation to somewhere, just me, my brother, and my parents, and my dad would take us somewhere different every year, and we mostly stayed on the East Coast during those years, but I noticed that during those family vacations, family trips, I was usually more interested in the roads than I was a lot of the destinations. So that was a red flag.
That's a common side effect. Yeah. that right there is...
Especially the shows and stuff my mom would drag us all to.
Mm-hmm.
That was easy to decide, roads or shows. Mm-hmm. So that's where my first taste. That's where I started getting the hint that, hey, I'm a little more interested than the average person probably is in this. Mm-hmm. And also, growing up in Pennsylvania, I'm a firm believer, after being to all 48 states and on many of the interstates in this country, that Pennsylvania's roads are substandard in a lot of ways. They're interstates.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you're not the only person.
You sound shocked, Dan.
You're not the only. You're not the only person sitting at this table who feels that way.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, folks.
Yeah,
So. That was interesting. How can one state get this so wrong? So I was interested in that, going to other states, seeing that their roads just felt so much smoother to drive on. Even urban roads, freeways, it just seemed much less congested, less tight, more open. That intrigued me. How where I grew up seemed to have lesser quality interstate highways and even surrounding states, and especially other ones with more space in them and less people. But that always intrigued me from a young age.
Because you're from the Pittsburgh area, you're not far from there, right? So that's probably the first city that you knew pretty well, right? So that's kind of where that comes from, seeing those roads compared to roads in other states. You're alluding to Pittsburgh.
Absolutely, yeah, in a way. Pittsburgh has geographical challenges, three rivers coming together, mountains, terrain, all that jazz. But, the roads, it's like all of them have, half the lanes they need to carry the traffic that they have today. And so that's always intrigued me. Why did this turn out this way? And I'm sure there's people who could educate me on the funding or whatever, why that was, but I don't. Well, I don't really care about it that much.
We could probably sit at this table all night and go over that stuff. I'm sure. But,
you can enlighten me.
Well, I'm sure I could.
You know more about that than I do.
I mean, I got 12 hours to sit here, but I know you don't. So that's the problem. Where did this idea to do a website or do a YouTube page or something along those lines come from? And when did that option occur to you, and when did you start really pursuing that?
I would say, I don't know exactly what year, but a rough estimate, I'd say 2008 or so. I discovered AARoads.com, run by a friend of mine, Alex Schnitzman, Andy Field, and Brent Ivy. Great road photo website, very informative. I spent a lot of time browsing that. And I also discovered OKRoads.com, run by Eric Stuve, who I have had the chance to meet twice in person. Very cool guy. Okay. And I respect his work a lot.
See that? If you're listening out there.
Eric,
pay attention.
Give you a shout out. But seriously, I really respect both Eric and Alex, Andy, Brent, what they did with their sites. And so I guess I'm kind of copycatting and hey, this inspired me to start my own. Why not just, I always had an interest in web development, I guess you would say, is how there's millions of websites out there, someone's doing this stuff. Why don't I know anyone that's doing it? Yeah. So I didn't know anyone, so I'm curious. I couldn't just ask them, so I had to learn on my own how to do it, but I was interested enough to teach myself what I needed to know, and also learning along the way from others who I met along the way. Right. And so that's something, I guess, that interest in roads that we talked about from a young age, and that interest in web development, and you marry the two, and it's just a no-brainer, I guess. Then, the YouTube channel, I believe there's a guy in the same room as me right now who had one before me, and
well, we're not gonna name names here.
We're not gonna name names,
Okay.
but he's sitting right next to me, and his
Oh,
name's
well.
and Urfi M.
Yeah, I'll go along with that.
Yeah, Roadway Wiz, Dan Murphy had a YouTube channel of mostly East Coast, Eastern Seaboards, road videos, real-time road videos. And I was very intrigued by this because you could relive driving any stretch of roads that he had filmed anytime you wanted to. And I feel that's something you can only get with that style of video. So that, I thought, well, I do a lot of road exploring all over the country, and why not just, I guess, try my hand at it, and that way I'll have my own footage to look at whenever I want to, look back and relive some drives that I took. And so I thought, with the way he was doing his videos, it inspired me to start doing some of my own, the same style, same method, and that's really all there was to it. I didn't think there was much of a market for that, if we're talking about, like, response to those videos. I didn't think there was much of a market for that style of video until I discovered his channel and realized, like, hey, there is, so people will discover these and will be able to also relive these drives that they took before, or see roads in states and parts of the country or cities that they haven't been to, and be able to experience it like they're the ones driving it. And also for information purposes, like when we were chatting earlier, you had said like you can use the real-time video to tell exactly in smooth flowing traffic how long it'll take to drive this stretch of road A to B. And
that's only one positive aspect of it, but there are several. Yeah,
that's certainly one. That's certainly one that I embraced as well with that style of video. And so that's really about it there. I was inspired by others who were already doing it. And
so what you're basically saying is that it's my fault.
Yeah, you created a monster.
It is. I created a monster, didn't I? Oh, well. All right, I will accept the blame for that.
Somehow.
Okay.
You'll pay for dinner.
That's fine. All right, you know what? It's a small price to pay. What can I say? Your concentration has primarily been the interstate system, and as I said before, you made it your goal to clinch the interstate system.
Correct.
In the U.S., and you've been to 48 states?
Yes.
So you've been to the lower 48 now.
Lower 48.
At least a little bit. You've been to a little bit of every state now, right?
Yes.
And was there any thought about, what was your mindset like? Were you just always going to do only interstate highways, or were you focused on just doing limited access in general, and then you narrowed it down? Or, like, how did you decide, I'm going to do interstates primarily, and that's going to be it?
How I decided was primarily that interstates are always the most interesting to me. Obviously, the fastest moving, the most well-constructed roads usually. And that's what it was to me. They were always the most interesting, and I've always had an interest just in the interstate system alone. And I think it's a modern marvel that we often take for granted.
Wow.
And
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, so it's, from the start, I was starting with interstates, bar none.
So that was that was your jumping off point, pretty much, was interstates, and that's what you've stayed with.
That's what I've stayed with, but not for that reason the whole time. What stuck me to stay with it, and not avoid, but not bother documenting U.S. and state routes as much, or at all, is that the interstate system is easier to document. It's, marked by the mile in every state except California. They have their own way of doing things there.
They just like to be difficult, I think.
And, exit numbers and almost every, except like short little 1.5 mile interstates. There's no point to really numbering those exits. But,
I mean, typically, yeah.
But, they're easy to document.
Yeah.
I had to draw the line somewhere, I think, like, rather, if I was going to set some kind of goal for what I was doing, whereas yours, it's to document, like, as much of the East Coast as possible, all kinds of roads. Mine, I wanted to do, the whole country, but I can't do every road in the country. Obviously, one person can't do that. I have, like, a real job and stuff. But,
yes, we all do.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But, decided to draw the line somewhere, and since the interstates were the ones, like I said at first, that intrigued me the most, and I spent the most time on, and are easiest to document, I just said, why don't I just go with this, start with that, try to clinch all of them, and, along the way, what else I can get, and, if there's ever a point where I don't reach that goal of getting all the interstates, and whatever keeps me from doing that, maybe I will just back down to doing more localized stuff, and that would cover obviously more U.S. and state routes and county roads and whatnot. But for now, it's all interstate because it's like for the reasons I gave.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't rule out covering other roads in the future, perhaps.
Yeah. So it's really it depends on where you are 5 years from now, or whatever time frame you want to say.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's things that could change that maybe I won't be able to drive to California again, and for that reason, I wouldn't be able to complete all the interstates, and maybe I'd still continue the hobby by doing more different kinds of roads. But we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. So, as I've said, you've been to 48 states.
Right.
And you've driven, I don't know how many different interstate routes.
I lost track.
Your favorite interstate, your stretch of interstate highway would be what?
I would have to. There's a couple I like way more than others. One of them, as I said to you before, is Interstate 70 in Arizona. The reason is mile for mile. It's only 146 miles long, I think. And
this is from Phoenix up to Flagstaff.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. In Phoenix, you're at about 1,200 feet in elevation. A matter of 146 miles up to Flagstaff, you're over 7,000 feet. I mean,
wow!
that's almost
So you climb a mile in elevation in just 150 miles, roughly.
On average, yeah. And then you go down. Even go down in the middle in the Verde Valley. You go down like 1,000 feet and then back up more.
Wow.
So it does fluctuate a little bit at that point, and it's just so intriguing. It doesn't really ever feel like you climb that many feet in that short of a distance, and it's just amazing when you see the signs saying the elevation. Every 1,000 feet you go up, you see 5,000 feet, now 6,000 feet, now 7,000. It's just when do we? When do we go up all that?
Yeah.
But I mean, there's certainly parts where it's obvious, but a lot there isn't.
Right.
And another reason, what happens with that change in elevation is the difference in plant and vegetation life as you go up. You start in Phoenix, there's palm trees, there's cactuses.
Yeah.
Cacti, I think, is the plural, but I'm not gonna.
I'll go along with you.
I'm not gonna bust myself over that if I'm wrong. But okay, so then you continue north. It turns to sagebrush, your typical desert vegetation. Then as you keep going north, suddenly tall pine trees start appearing when you get up around 6,000 feet in elevation. You're in Flagstaff and Munns Park, and it's just amazing. Like, we were cactuses and palm trees 146 miles ago. Now we're in a forest of pine trees surrounded by it. It's just beautiful. It's awesome.
So
amazing.
You go from basically desert country up into ski country in the matter of 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I don't know that there's any other stretch of highway that you could drive that is that pronounced and that short of a distance.
No, that's what, like I said, mile for mile, it's just amazing. Like, you get that other places in the Mountain West, but not in that short of a distance, like you said. And, okay, so I-17, probably my favorite if I had to pick. I also like I-90 in Montana, western Montana, about around Missoula west to the border of Idaho. It's also pretty nice through the Idaho Panhandle.
Mm.
And again, tall pine trees, just beautiful mountainous scenery. Um, the road's pretty good, It's just a fun drive. I enjoy driving both directions. And I also liked I-70 in Utah and Colorado. That's a no-brainer. I don't think there's anyone that would say they don't like that stretch.
Well, the Glenwood Canyon stretch on 70's in there, right?
Yeah.
So
That's definitely...
That, to me, that's a stretch that every person who's interested in roads should see at least once in their life.
I agree, yeah.
That whole stretch from the canyon up through the Eisenhower Tunnel and the Continental Divide and then down into Denver. I've heard that that's a tremendous drive.
And it is. It's, it's just pretty much like you just said.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much sums it up why it's an awesome drive. One of my less popular ones, I guess, that I like is I-44 from St. Louis to Oklahoma City.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know why it is. I really can't pinpoint it as easily as I just did the other three that I mentioned. But I've just always liked driving that road, through the Ozarks and a lot of rock cuts in Missouri and, the Oklahoma part, speed limit increases to 75 and the Willa Rogers Turnpike and Turner Turnpike. It's just, I don't know why, like I said, can't pinpoint the reason exactly as easy as I did with the other ones, but that's one that I've always been fond of. So, yeah, that's about it, I guess. There's several others I could go on about, but they're not. Those are the big ones. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Because, like you said, you could sit here for 12 hours, but we don't need to do that.
I mean, you really could go back and forth and kind of, dissect all your trips and all the roads that you traveled and the observations from each one. But so the big thing with you as part of this clinch business is that you are aiming to see every mile of the interstate system. Now, of course, what's going to end up happening over the years, as you are adding your collection, well, the interstate system is continually adding and expanding and changing. The original system that was commissioned in 1956 is still under construction.
Right.
And there are new pieces that have been added that are on the planning boards to be built also. So, as you get going and as you keep doing what you're doing, new sections are going to open, right, behind what you've already done. So what do you think is the best way to incorporate new sections that might open in the future? Like, say, for example, I think the big one is going to be I-69 from Indiana down to Texas.
Right.
So I don't know if you've already done all of 69 yet, but say if you did as of today, right? Well, that's going to be out of date when the next sections open up in Kentucky, Tennessee, and places like that.
Right.
So how are you going to go about adding to, or I guess catching up with these new pieces that open?
Yeah, that's a good question. And like you said, it's always changing, always being added to. So it presents a continuous challenge for someone who has the goal that I do. But it keeps things interesting at the same time because, it kind of gives you more to look forward to, I guess. And if you ever would get close to achieving the goal, and more is added on, I guess, if you're having fun doing it, you wouldn't mind doing more. So that's the way I look at it. But it is the thing that I like it more and I don't like it, basically, that it's being added to. Of course, it's adding to the country's infrastructure in the process as well, so there's no complaints there. But what it does for someone that's trying to do what I'm trying to do is it makes your planning even more crucial in future trips. So, here's a good example, is I-86 in New York here.
That's a big one.
Yeah, when it's, the part from... when they finish getting it all up to interstate standards and signing State Route 17 as I-86 the whole way from Pennsylvania, Erie County in Pennsylvania through New York, and that little dip into Pennsylvania again, then to Binghamton, then on eastward.
The stretch, I mean, it's 380 something miles to get you from Pennsylvania to Woodbury, New York.
Woodbury, New York. Okay, so it's that
And I think they have roughly 50% of it signed as of right now. It's mainly the stretch east of Binghamton that remains. I mean, the stretch between Elmira and Binghamton also, but that one is going to be signed, I think, sooner rather than later.
Right. It does look like, because they started co-signing the concurrency in Binghamton, I noticed a little bit. It's inconsistent, but it is there.
Yep.
And so to me, it shows it's probably coming, like you said, sooner than later. And that, hey, when it comes, and gives me a reason to revisit other parts, whereas I might not have been able to work it in before. Mm-hmm. So, like you said, as long as you're planning it well and prioritizing what you need to get done towards that goal, I think it's overall a good thing, and I like it more than I don't like it. And, hey, I'd never been on State Route 17 from Elmira to Binghamton, or east or from Binghamton, the end of the current sign section in Windsor.
Windsor, New York.
Windsor to Woodbury.
Yeah.
So, hey, it'd give me reason to see that, even though I could go do it now. Like I said before, I have to draw the line somewhere, and since it's not signed, I'm not going to do it till it is, and when it is, I go do it. It's just, I guess that's my mentality on it.
Yeah.
So that's the way I guess I have more of a positive outlook on it, that it if anything, it's going to give me a reason to revisit other areas that I otherwise wouldn't have. Now, the I-69 that you mentioned, I kind of just held off on even bothering getting the sections there, because it's further away from home than
and the pieces that they're opening right now are kind of they're smaller and they're isolated.
Right, so very isolated. Yes. Right. So it's I might just wait till there's a bigger section of it done, and just go get it all in one fell swoop, or two different trips once the whole thing's done X number of years from now.
Right.
So it's a continuous challenge, but keeps things interesting.
Your appreciation for the interstate system in general, I'm sure, is different today than it was several years ago when you started, because now you've been to every state in the continental U.S. You've seen the scale of it. You've seen how broad and expansive it is. What is your take on how that has changed over the years?
My respect and admiration of it has drastically increased ever since I started doing this hobby and started doing this goal, or working towards this goal. It's easy to look at a map and say, oh, well, I-80 goes from Teaneck, New Jersey, all the way to San Francisco. But, when you drive it through every mile, it's just like, wow, this is huge. You can see it on the map and not comprehend just how
it legitimizes what 3,000 miles is.
Yeah.
Like, when we read it on the page, it's like, oh, this interstate's 3,000 miles, okay. But if you were to drive it, you can see, okay, this is what 3,000 miles is.
Yeah, and it's all...
It quantifies it.
All on the same road. Like, it's interesting to be in California, in Barstow, seeing the I-40 shield, and then being in Wilmington, North Carolina, seeing the same shield. Like, that's a matter of
2,500 miles.
2,600 miles or something. Yeah. And, like, it's the same road. To me, that's just amazing. Like, spanning almost the entire continent. That one doesn't even go to the coast. But, just seeing that one end of the country, the other, like, it's amazing. It really puts it in perspective. Of how huge this system is, and how much work how much money, how much effort, how much work went into making it what it is. And so, I mean, like I said earlier, it's a modern marvel that we take for granted. That's why I like to refer to it as. And
it's a victim of its own success, too. Because when they designed it, it was supposed to be for defense purposes. It was not meant to be a commuter road, and it was not meant to be the main way that we get around in this country.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, to see it change from its original purpose to what it's primarily used as now, like you just said, is also interesting. And also makes you appreciate it more that that we have that network of roads, of overall good roads compared to those of other countries, and that you can use for sometimes for a toll or sometimes for not paying to use it, and just awesome. And Dwight D. Eisenhower is a genius.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's probably our most recent president who put investment in infrastructure at the top of his priority, because he had the idea for it from being in Germany as a general and seeing the German Autobahn system that was built in the 30s. That's where the idea for the interstate system came from. He came back from Germany saying, well, we need to have this, because the Nazis were able to get around. They sent their tanks down these highways, and that's how they were able to invade all these countries in such a short period of time. So he came back saying, we really need to have something like this in our country for defense purposes. In the middle of the Cold War, to be able to mobilize troops and whatnot. So that was really where it came from. It wasn't about you or I driving around. It was about it was a military inspired thing.
Yeah, and like you said, to get military equipment A to B faster, like that. For that purpose, it was absolutely essential. And then it's very interesting to see it. After that was no longer needed at the end of all that. It stuck around and continued to grow and grow and grow.
Right. Now it's seen as a commerce tool instead of a defense and military tool.
Right. It still has a commerce, a high commerce purpose for moving goods around, moving freight around the country. It's absolutely essential. But to have it really open to us to also use, it's like a thing that anyone can, everyone can benefit from. The economy, businesses can benefit from it, in getting their goods, to them or sent to their customers in a more timely fashion. And also me and you can use it to get to where we need to go faster, assuming it's not, the other side of the country, then the airplane would be
that would be preferred. Yes.
But it's just there for anyone to use as long as you have a driver's license and pay the taxes to help fund it. So it's a very so to go back to the original question, my appreciation for it has only grown and multiplied since I started doing this, and that's because of seeing so much of it and seeing how it's continued to thrive even after its original purpose was no longer really as big as it was at the time the system was conceived. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I thank you for coming in and doing this. We could go on for hours and hours, and I don't think we want to do that. But just real quickly to follow up on this trip that you're doing, you're hanging out in the New York area, and then the rest of your trip, you're going to go over to Buffalo. That's where you're going to end up, is out in Buffalo.
Correct.
Which is where I went to college. So, see, I understand all the roads that you're doing on this trip. And this is probably the only trip, the first one and probably the only one, where I've done all the roads that you're going to do. So I'm interested to see how you're going to pull this off. What are your impressions of upstate New York, Albany, Buffalo? You're going to spend some time in those areas, but I mean, there's a lot of little interstates up in that area, but obviously you gotta keep on doing those if you're gonna hit every one.
Yeah, that's upstate New York. Been there before. It's nice area and nice part of the country, so I don't mind going back and doing what I have left. So. It's just going to keep plugging away at it, and after this run, it will leave me with only 13 miles of interstate, current signed interstate in New York, till I have all the interstate in New York clinched, and that's just the 13 miles of Interstate 99.
See, now I've done that one, but I haven't done one that you've done.
I think I watched your video of it.
Well, you've seen my work of I-99, but there are a couple that you've done that I haven't done, even.
Yeah.
So that's
Really?
kind of an interesting... Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which ones
Well,
come to mind?
I was last in the
Probably
St. Lawrence...
781, because that's new.
Because I was up in the Watertown area maybe 5 years ago,
Yeah.
when they were still building 781. So I haven't been up there since, and it's kind of silly to do a big trip just to do 3 miles of interstate. So unless I'm going up that way again, I'm not going to really
if you're going
bother
to
with that
Montreal
one.
or something,
Right.
you'll
Which
get
I've already been there twice, so I don't think I want to go back there again. But that's another discussion for another time. 48 states that you've been to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 49 states have signed interstate highways. 48 of them are very easy to get to and very easy to access.
Mm-hmm.
What's your plan for Hawaii?
Uh,
When are you doing Hawaii?
Maybe, well, hopefully sooner than later, actually, because I haven't been there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I sooner than later, that's all I'll say. I can't, maybe
Hawaii,
the next couple years.
Hawaii you could do in a day.
Yeah, you
but
do
the
it in a
issue
day.
is, of course, getting there.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it's, you know.
They got there's some great roads there to drive, too.
Yeah, it looks like it. I've
Not
seen
just
some.
the interstates.
Yeah,
If you get to-
that's one place where I'll probably do more than just the interstates, because you're isolated there on an island, so you might as well just do everything. It's not like it's big. So, and, you know, that's, yeah, I hope to do that sometime soon. So, but when exactly, I don't know. But I look forward to doing it, though.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have any plans to ever go?
We'll see.
If you
You never know. That's the thing. Like you might have the chance. If you ever get the chance, you don't know when it's going to come up. So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's. And even though Alaska doesn't have signed interstates, I'll still go. Just
you
gotta get to 50.
If you've been to 49, you gotta at least.
I'll do them all.
At that
do
point,
both
you
at
gotta.
once.
Yeah, you gotta at least go into Alaska on a layover from a flight, rent a car for a few hours, and say that you drove some roads in Alaska. You know.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What a pleasure, Tom. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. It's been a great time here with you, and I got to see a lot of interesting sights and got to hear a lot of interesting information from you about your line of work on the Tappan Zee Bridge project as an engineer and inspector, and I greatly respect all your work, both professional and hobby, with your YouTube videos and all your photos, and for you, I probably wouldn't be doing this, so I wouldn't probably be here if it wasn't for what you're doing,
Well,
it's been a pleasure.
You're very kind, and I'm glad that at least part of my legacy is sitting next to you, sitting next to me right now, and with you. He's Tom Valazak. He is a road enthusiast. His website, crosscountryroads.com, YouTube channel, Cross Country Roads. Check him out. He's doing some awesome work. Tom, thank you.
Thank you, Dan.